Welcome to Mindful Live 84. It is currently the 30th of May in 2022. The 30th of May being Indian Arrival Day in this beautiful twin island republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And we are celebrating that. I believe for a while they turned it over to just Arrival Day, you know, to encompass the different arrivals, because there were multiple arrivals. Trinidad and Tobago is what we call a melting pot, so there were multiple arrivals, and at one point in time I believe they changed the Indian to just Arrival Day to celebrate it all, but I believe it's changed back now, and I appreciate that, because the East Indian community in Trinidad and Tobago is not just a small little group, that's a plurality. There are quite a few, and I think that is something to be celebrated, an integral part of our society when they came and celebrating that moment. So today is Indian Arrival Day, and I am glad to celebrate it. I am glad all my Indian brethren came in. I mean, I did find a wife. All right. Thank you for joining. I am your host, Nathan Springer. I am glad you are here with me. Today, what are we speaking about? Well, the initial thing that we are going to speak about today, the initial thing that we are starting off with, has to do with the Social Affairs Ministry. And it always seems so unfortunate that the ministry where they're supposed to be helping the poor has some of the most thieving bacchanal you will find. Bribes and illegal transactions with social grants. This is from 2 days ago, but it's new. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services is hemorrhaging millions of dollars in an apparent scheme being operated by some employees who are said to be receiving huge kickbacks and bribes to fast-track social grant applications that have been stuck in the system for months. Now, within this, you'll see some how to see you on YouTube. Oh, glad you asked, Mr. Matchman. I should have said this before. If you are looking at me live right now on TikTok or on Instagram, you can head over to YouTube also, because I stream live over on YouTube. And I am Nathan Springer over on YouTube. The Mindful Live airs every night around 9:30. A little after, usually on YouTube. And I'm Nathan Springer there. Go over there and subscribe to Nathan Springer on YouTube. Be sure to hit a like, drop a comment if you have something to say. If you're looking at this on repeat, still hit that like and drop a comment. The benefit of YouTube also is that the articles that I'm reading, you don't just have to listen to me read it. The articles are scrolling behind me, and the video is there after the live is finished, so you can see what all the other Mindful Lives were about. So yeah, head over to YouTube, Nathan Springer. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, please, and thank you very much. So, the strange thing with this, or the unfortunate thing with this, is it seems like part of the way that they are running a racket inside of the ministry there is because they are slow and inept at providing services for people. Because they are slow and inept at providing services for people, they become better able to run a racket, because everyone now has to wait a long while before they get what they go for. So there's there's always something you can put in the engine to, grease the engine and allow it to move a little faster. This was revealed by Donna Cox, Minister of Social Development and Family Services, days after the 2021 Auditor General's report exposed inconsistencies and irregularities that have resulted in state grants meant to assist the needy and vulnerable going into the wrong hands. The report showed that people as young as 27 are collecting senior citizen pensions, food card beneficiaries obtaining double payments, pertinent information for processing of grants missing from the ministry's database, and a payout of $886,350 to 61 beneficiaries whose national IDs did not correspond with their date of birth, and 4 centenarians between the ages of 114 to 135 appearing on the system. So bacchanal galore. 27-year-olds out there receiving senior citizen pensions. And in case you're wondering what that age barrier is to recognize what a senior citizen is, because maybe in Trinidad and Tobago we do things differently and 27 might be a senior citizen, but no, that is not actually the case. The senior citizens are supposed to be over 65. So, yeah, a 27-year-old collecting the senior citizen pension is a bit of a problem. Food card beneficiaries obtaining double payment, so they're getting 2 food card doses of money on their food card per month. But this has been widely known for quite some time now, to be very honest. Pertinent information for the processing of grants missing from the ministry's database. So all of these grants, these things that are there to help people in times of need, you're supposed to have a lot of information that you have to give in to the ministry in order for them to give you this. They don't just give you money so easily. They have to make sure that you're going to use this for the purpose that you say you're going to use it for. And what they are finding is some of the information that is supposed to be there in the ministry's database in order for them to effectively disperse this money cannot be found. Good evening, Mr. Curvon. Do you think that a fine should be invoked to people who don't vote? Very interesting. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. That pressure... no. Voting should be something voluntary. The nature of what voting is. And not a fine. Maybe you could do things in such a way, or involve or make the voting process work in such a way that nearly everyone is part of it by default. But I find a fine, and a fine is a crime to the poor. That's one of my problems with fines. When you're talking about fines as a punishment for nearly anything in society, that's really a specific punishment for the poor. Someone who is very wealthy, I know that happens in Australia. I know Australia has basically mandatory voting. I don't particularly like Australia. But a fine is punishment to the poor. And then what you're saying is the poor is being forced now to choose a side. You're forced now, you must choose something. And forcing someone to choose something may tilt the scales more than you might believe. And forcing the population into voting it creates weird incentives, I think. It creates an incentive, yes, that you have to reach to the entire population. But generally speaking, if you force the entire population to vote, the entire population doesn't pay attention. So you're telling me now that you're forcing people who do not pay attention to select who is supposed to run the whole country. And it may put incentives there so that the governing politicians, people aspiring to be politicians, must now petition to a much more ignorant crowd. I am not of the view necessarily that democracy is the best way to run a country. Who is to say that the view of the majority is the right view? If we are to estimate that who might the majority of people be? How smart are the majority of people? And do you want to force everyone to have to select something like that? No, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think that would lead to better ends. Yo, good night, Mr. Interesting. In an interview at a St. Vincent Port of Spain office on Friday, Cox said before the report was made public, a ministry had requested an audit after problems were encountered with the processing of grants. It is now the subject of an investigation by the TNT Police Service and an Investigation and Compliance Unit. The ICU Investigation and Compliance Unit comprises 11 investigators. While many of the alarming issues stemmed from human error, lack of due diligence, checks and balances, and accountability on the ministry's end, Cox said measures have already been put in place to address the troubling issue. Now, I don't buy that. I'm sorry, I don't buy that. Many of the alarming issues they're seeing stemmed from human error, lack of due diligence, checks and balances, and accountability on the ministry's end. Now, here's why I don't really believe that. Here's why this is something difficult for me to believe. You're telling me that a lot of this, a large amount of this, is just human error, mistakes. Whoops, oops, we didn't mean to, sorry. But I would feel if there was some errors, at some point in time, someone would notice this. Human errors would be picked up. Human errors would be reported. There are double contingencies in this. And we are talking about money leaving. Nearly all of the public servants that talk about how the public service run, they let you know that very few decisions go through one person. So you're telling me that there would have been a series of 3 people doing the same human error, that oopsie doozy allows a couple thousands out of the register? That seems just a little too convenient to me. That is just a whoops and an oops. Matchman says first time I'm watching, will be watching from now on. Thank you for that. That will be much appreciated. What's the topic tonight? Democracy partnered with privatization could run a country well because they would have to give account. I kind of believe that too. It should be impossible to process the payment without all the fields and the database being entered. There are almost always contingencies, and you know what the really strange thing is with all of this very often? If you go with your good self and you're trying to follow the correct process to get something done, you're going to see contingency upon contingency, and one person is saying, well, no, we have to get the signature of my supervisor, and then you have to carry this over to the next ministry to get it stamped, and then you have to bring it back and get the blood of a firstborn and the tail here of a unicorn and mix it in a cauldron at the end of a rainbow, and then bring it back into the ministry to get it double stamped and double signed by our senior supervisor, and then we would send it out. And that's what happens when you go through the good process. You're trying to be a law-abiding citizen, and all of a sudden they tell you that by a mistake, by human error, all of those many steps in the process are just bypassed by human error, and whoops, thousands of dollars slip under the door. How does such a thing happen? She admitted the ministry has always been operating with an old data system that was riddled with flaws, risks, and gaps, which some people were aware of. Now, that has a different tone. Good night, Sneaker Clan TT over on Instagram. That has a different tone than what they were saying before. That has a slightly different tone. If you are telling me that there are gaps, flaws, risks in your old data system that people are aware of, and they take advantage of those gaps and risks and flaws, then that's not human error. That's not an error. I regret to inform you that's not the meaning of error. Error doesn't have that meaning. That's pretty much on purpose. If someone sees a gap and goes through the gap, it's not an error. That's literally on purpose. If someone knows that there's a flaw in the system, if someone knows where there's a weakness in the system, and they exploit that weakness in your system, then that isn't a flaw. And if the minister, these are the things that bewilder me. If the minister is saying, she admitted the ministry has also been operating with an old data system that was riddled with flaws, risks, and gaps. So, are you telling me the minister is aware that the data system they're using is outdated, has risks and flaws and gaps, and they are well aware of this, and they're still using that? How hard is it to upgrade a data system? Like, really, how difficult is that? At some point in time, if you know that your system is faulty, if you know that people know how to take advantage of the faulty system, and you've known it all along and then they took advantage of it, at some point in time, I would look at you as aiding and abetting the whole process. If I have a couple sheep, I'm a farmer out here, I'm a shepherd, I am but a lowly shepherd, I have a couple sheep, and I go to a sheep hotel, whatever they call them, a place where they keep some sheep for the night. I'm going to somewhere and I have to sleep in another hotel, so I ask a man, you keep and look after my sheep for a little while. I put my sheep in there and you watch it for a while. And I put my sheep in the guy's pen and I go to my room and I sleep. I spend the weekend in there, and when I come back I had 10 sheep and now I have 8 sheep. My sheeps have disappeared, 2 of them. And the man tells me, I know it had a hole in the fence, boy. And I know it had thieves coming through there regularly and stealing sheep, boy. They steal a couple last week too, At some point, I'd be watching this man and saying, well, if you knew that the fence was compromised and you knew thieves come through there and steal, and you did nothing to stop the fence from being compromised and nothing to stop the thieves from stealing, then I start to wonder if you have a problem at all with these thieves. I start to wonder if you and the thieves are on the same side. Are you in cahoots? Christopher Scott over on YouTube says, yes, that is where accountability falls short. It is not now these things happening. This government ministers always have some horrible excuse for their non-accountability. How can a 27 get old age pension? Not just one 27-year-old, but a few. I don't know. That's the question we have to ask. We have to ask now. Most of the inconsistencies discovered by the Auditor General are associated with data loaded before October 2019, Cox said. It is clear it is a mixture of human error and corruption. I am not here to make any excuses. Many of these errors seem to be human errors associated with inputting the data, but there are others which seem to suggest that there may be illegal transactions within the system. I use the word corruption because there is corruption. There is an element of corruption. It is not just human error, she said. Now, here's the next part with this. Human error. What is human error in this? If we're talking about the government paying out money where it shouldn't pay out, where's the human error? If you get pension in error, how does that happen? Someone under the age of the pension age just mistakenly gets a pension check in the mail or something like that. They're not going to cash that. How does that happen in error? Which one of these money sharing processes happened in error? Explain to, I would like that. Which one of the processes there that caused the country to lose money happened in error? And explain to me how an error can lead to money leaving the coffers, because that's a bit difficult for me to understand. I could understand an error leading to a badly spelled name on a check. So someone's check is bouncing because their name isn't spelled correctly. Human error. I could understand an error puts a wrong 0 after a number or something like that. And then that doesn't work and the bank recognizes something is strange and they write back and they say there's a human error. Yeah, right. But in these processes, there are millions of, well, not millions, but there are many countermeasures in place. Where does the human error come in? Human error, I could understand human error as part of the process, but to say that the entire process went through to the end and money left the treasury to someone's pocket all because of human error, I am sorry, I don't believe you. And I think the burden of proof is on you to explain how such a thing would be possible. Something like that just doesn't sound really possible to me. One area of corruption discovered was checks issued to dead people being cashed. These checks were returned to the ministry by the families of the dead clients, and some of that was taking place. It could not have been external persons. It must have been persons internally. The ministry has not been doing what it is supposed to do. I can't only blame the people. There are some vulnerable people who should be on the system and are not. That's true. Cox said such encashments amounted to fraud and corruption, and that the ministry has put in place a reconciliation unit to deal with such checks. And on the matter of the 27-year-olds qualifying for the senior citizens grants, Cox said this was attributed to human error and is under investigation. Sure, right, okay, right. 27-year-olds, multiple of them, receiving senior citizen pension grants, and it's human error. Okay, sure. The minister was unable to confirm exactly how much money the ministry was defrauded, but said the police will treat with those fraudulent matters from what may possibly be organized crime. She said such gaps can be exploited by criminal elements. Now, here's the little play I find. A little play there that is a little strange. The gaps can be exploited by criminal elements. So the gaps are the mistakes on the ministry's side. The exploitation is the criminal elements. But how do the criminal elements find out about the gaps? Or are the gaps put there to allow for the criminal elements to make room to move? I don't think any of these things, and to be fair, she did admit a lot of that. I don't think any of these things can be done without internal help. It is like a criminal enterprise entrenched. This is a number of years. It is not now. She said this bothers her to no end and causes her sleepless nights. In the ministry, there are supervisors at every level, and we feel that people weren't being supervised properly. And that is my point. That is obviously true. That is obviously true. There's no way any of this can go on without quite a bit of complicity going on all around. These things, something as expansive as this going on with money leaving a ministry like this. This isn't one person. These aren't 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. This has to be numerous people inside of there. Some of them very likely involved to varying extents, whether it be some of them directly involved in the corrupt matters, while some are just turning a blind eye and pretending they didn't see anything. But the fact is, many people would be directly and indirectly involved in something like this. Something like this doesn't just happen. It does not. Action is now being taken against delinquent supervisors for failing to act against wrongdoers, while some employees have left the job. In going forward, Cox said staff must be trained and retrained. It is very difficult to pinpoint anyone based on how the process was lax as to who did what. These are things that have been happening for a while. It's a culture. Persons would know how to cover up. Persons would know how to not say certain things. So here you see the problem. Here you see the problem. It is very difficult to pinpoint anyone based on how the process was lax as to who did what. So, the criminality is going on. The people in charge have it running on a very lax system that allows for the criminality, but also because the system is so lax, no one knows who is actually responsible for making the decisions. So when human errors occur, the process is so lax, you cannot go back and reverse the process and find out where did this human error occur. Let's see specifically where was the point this human error occurred. No, the process is so lax, such a thing is impossible. The human error just went, and you can't even backtrace where it came from. Files of clients who have been beneficiaries of more than one grant have also mysteriously disappeared. I don't know if that was deliberately done so that you would not be able to pinpoint certain persons, Cox said. Oh, she does not know if that was deliberately done. Files of certain clients who received more than one grant mysteriously disappeared, and she's not sure if that was deliberately done. We have also had instances where there is a query. A file goes missing, so who is to be held accountable? Because the file might contain the information as to the person who may be, such as the caseworker or the person who might have been the first person of contact for someone who comes into the office. And this is why I say, nearly, for something like this, fire the whole office, nearly. That's nearly my mentality on this, because something like this doesn't go on with a large proportion of the office knowing. Listen, all right, at least a large number of us know who was the caseworker. The caseworker's name isn't only written in the file. We know who the caseworker was, but we are not saying. Okay, that's one. The caseworker's name is supposed to be on the file. We know where the file was supposed to be. We know who have access to the file. So, okay, the file is missing now. We know very likely who may have caused the file to go missing. And again, we say nothing. Okay. How is that any different from a criminal gang? How is that any different from the police that many people complain about so often when the police do corrupt things and the police close ranks and you cannot get into there? It seems like the same thing to me. The ministry's our own public service is stealing our money and then operating like a gang and closing ranks to hide this from the public. Listen. I find such a thing should be treated like a gang. No. Listen. You must be able, for some of these gang laws they like to pass, you must be able to run up inside of Lavantil, inside of Silas, in some lower income area, see a couple fellas liming together and string together some stuff and pull them all in as a gang. All in as a gang because they're a gang and we have anti-gang laws here. But these people, we know a couple of things for sure. Money was stolen. The information about how the money was stolen disappeared. The information about how the money was stolen disappeared is not being said. They are closing ranks. It's no snitches inside of this. Isn't that like a criminal gang? Like, I mean, we don't have US laws here, but a RICO case out there, these people are collaborating in a criminal conspiracy. I find that's what we should start to see in some of these cases. Listen, if you see some of these public servants, and some of them may be mothers and respectable members of society, if you start to see some offices inside of the public service, the entire office in handcuffs going down to the central booking station, you will start to see how a lot of these people start to sell out each other. Because some of them, the people who were there and didn't get any money, all they did was they see something happen and they're like, well, that's not my business, yes, let me mind my business. You will see how they start to see what they saw all of a sudden if everyone started to go down for the criminal conspiracy. Because to me, that's what that seems like. That's the only way something like this functions to me. As the ministry undertakes a cleanup exercise, they have also implemented a data verification system which is being integrated into a modern digitized system. The TTPS has conducted interviews with some staff members who have been uncooperative, Cox said. What is this? Staff members inside of this ministry where money has gone missing are uncooperative. The minister said she has received information that clients who have been waiting months for social services grants were approached by staff members who promised to fast track their applications for kickbacks and bribes. Some clients receive retroactive payments of over $100,000. So here's how that works. For some reason, my pension gets held up. Now, I turned 65 since last year, January. My pension gets held up for a year plus. All of that pension for all of those months that it was held up, I am supposed to be retroactively paid still, given still. But if I am not getting any money, and if my pension has accumulated now to several tens of thousands of dollars, and someone contacts me from inside the ministry and they say, well, I hear you're having some problem accessing your social services grants, here's what. I could work out that process for you. What's happening right now, they're over the phone. Okay, so right now we're really swamped, right? We just don't have anyone to see about your case. I just pulled up your case here and I saw your number, so I said I'll give you a call because your case seems very important and I will see about this personally for you, but it may take me some extra time. So if you could just make sure that my extra time is compensated for, I'll be sure that this payment of $98,000 will get to you within the next week. So what do you say about that? And what would you say? Many people might be like, okay, fine, I'll give him $5,000 and I'll still get $93,000 as a lump sum and finally get the process of getting my pension on the way. So here we see how the inefficiency, the incompetence of the ministry, of the government service, of the public sector is helping them get into their bribery side, get into their criminal side. So their incompetence is feeding into the criminality. Wow. Imagine that. You're trapped on one side by incompetence, and on the other side, the route out of the incompetence is criminality. And doesn't that seem how it is regularly in Trinidad and Tobago? There'll be too much red tape to get anything done. If by chance you can't get something done, yeah, you need to pay a bribe. In another explosive and shocking revelation, Cox said they suspect as much as 5,000 persons living abroad are receiving senior citizen pensions and other grants. Wow. 5,000 people living abroad out there collecting our money. Yeah. That's how it goes. You're trapped between a rock and a hard place. Incompetence and criminality. That seems to be the way it goes. So that's why, like, when I saw people, this site, this organization with their website, say that Trinidad and Tobago is the number 6 in criminality, and when I read the article, I didn't go deep into how they got all their statistics and everything, but it was an interesting quick read. I saw that basically what they did, simple enough, they took all the reports of crime and collated it with the population per 100,000. And when you understand that, they aren't only talking about violent crime, they are talking about crime in general. And when it comes to crime in general, listen, I will not doubt that for a second. Trinidad and Tobago has a lot of criminality. And I think some of that comes from the fact that the processes to get things done are very difficult. The red tape to get a lot of things done. And to be honest, I wouldn't doubt, to put it bluntly, I wouldn't doubt that some of that is done on purpose. Well, you're running an old data system over in that ministry, knowing that there are gaps and faults and flaws inside of it. And oh, surprise, surprise, people know how to get through the faults and gaps. How long has that old data system been there? And how long have they known it's a problem? I wonder how long that old data system is going to still be there when we all know now that it's a problem. Yeah, wow. And the red tape there to stop you from even doing things in the correct manner. And When it was that Trinidad and Tobago ran basically as an oil nation, as an oil baron, we made a lot of money from this oil business. A lot of this corruption in the general economy and in the general society could have been bypassed because the society was so awash with money, the corruption could have been ignored to some extent. But now when you look at this, as more people, especially the millennial generation seems to be a lot more into the entrepreneurial side of life, and I think some of the internet and social media might have something to do with that. And when they are trying to get into this, some of this red tape they are noticing now, and they're wondering, but how is business done in this country? How do we get anything done? And to be very honest, the current government, PNM, for those of you who have been in enough of my lives, know my stance on this. I think when it comes to this kind of problem specifically, this is where the PNM shines a bad light. All right, there's more to this. I was reading from the founder of WePay. TNT has too much red tape. WePay founder laments. This is from the 27th. Unnecessary red tape in Trinidad and Tobago is what drove the founder of WePay, Trinidadian Aldwin Wayne, to move the headquarters of his financial technology fintech company from TNT to Jamaica. We lost a young entrepreneur that is good night reaping what you saw over on YouTube, a young entrepreneur that is coming into the frontier of the market. This is someone going into where the economy seems like it is heading in the future. He's not someone that seems to be building businesses of the past. This seems to be a business of the future. This is something you want. And he's a local Trinidadian. And he moved, it's not that he set up initially, he moved his headquarters from Trinidad to Jamaica. If any of you remember the late Patrick moving Augustus, whatever, the late Patrick Manning's ambition. A lot of his ambition was this very thing. His vision was that the Caribbean, that Port of Spain, Trinidad, would be the financial center of the Caribbean. But for such a thing to occur, you have to be able to open up the market for those who are the best at competing to enter. Massimo Original over on Instagram says, true, actually the financial technologies company WePay recently left. He left for Jamaica. Unfortunately, Trinidad and Tobago is ranked as mostly unfree by the Heritage Foundation and their economic index. It's not surprising. Wayne lamented yesterday that TNT has all the resources, infrastructure, and a fantastic educated public needed for successful fintech solutions. So we have everything necessary otherwise. But bureaucracy was the problem. He was speaking during a meeting at the Parliament's Joint Select Committee on the Finance and Legal Affairs. The GSC met to inquire into the implementation of a regulatory framework for the development of fintech and e-payments. Asked by an opposition senator what prompted him to move WePay's headquarters to Jamaica in 2020 and to compare his experiences doing business there and here, he said they, Jamaica, did not have the level of bureaucracy involved in making simple decisions. If something works, use it. If you have a company that provides this value and one island they're saying let's try to figure it out, and on the other island they're saying let's use it, the decision was very easy for me to make. It wasn't my decision to make. The bureaucracy made the decision. The ease of doing business is the problem. He went on to urge the Trinidad and Tobago International Financial Center, whose chief executive officer was also addressing the GSC, to remove all the barriers to doing business. The Ministry of Finance should not be getting involved in technical decisions. Manage money, not technology. And once we get to that point, then you'll see adoption of fintech solutions, Wayne said. He recalled Now listen to this story. This is interesting. Goodnight Crash 7200. Recall that in 2018, WePay introduced court pay in Trinidad, which allowed people to make court-ordered maintenance payments electronically or online. Passage of the payments into Courts Bill 2018 paved the way for the electronic payment system to be used. The problem that we had to fix in Trinidad is that the judiciary had 27 courts spread across TNT, and basically what he went in to explain there is if you filed something in the court in Point Fortin and you moved from Point Fortin, and let's say you're living in Tobago now, you had to go down to Point Fortin in order to pay whatever you had to pay, and the person who you had to pay to had also to reach down to Point Fortin to collect it, and that was a problem that they solved by allowing online payments through the court pay system. Right there shows what the problem is. You have a working solution, but then he noted that expansion of the court pay to allow fines and fees to be paid online hit a snag in 2020 because of red tape. After being very successful with court pay, the judiciary was then told by the Treasury that they can't move forward with expansion in some of these services because the Treasury added a new rule that the bank needs to provide this service. The owner explains to you why the system went down, why the system is running into problems. The Treasury added a new rule that now a bank had to do this service. And this is my PNM problem. This is my PNM problem. I find a lot of what they do herds you into the status quo businessman. And that calcifies the system. That makes it hard to get progress in the system because you're turning everything backwards. You don't want any progress because progress, there are new folks in there that may make the money, but I have this old money here sitting. And if I allow these old people, if I allow these new people into the system, my old ways of making money may not be as successful. So maybe I should hold up on that. That kind of thinking, yeah, it allows the wealthy to remain wealthy in the now moment, but in the long run, that's how you crash. That's how you crash because things don't actually stay the same. Things don't actually stay the same. If you were selling VHS in the 90s and you're still selling VHS right now, you're out of business. If you were selling DVDs in the 2000s and you're still selling DVDs right now, well, maybe you're still selling them in Shogunas because there is still apparently a market for such. But generally speaking, you might be out of business. It's just the way things go. And if it is that you do not allow progress to be made when in the organic way, in the natural way, and you stymie progress, you are going to allow your society to die. That's what is inevitably going to happen eventually. That's what happens. Everything government touch goes downhill. Our obsession with regulation means stagnation. The system was down for months by the way. Yeah. Yep, look at GATE funding. You cannot attain a higher level of education unless you pay. I don't know where my opinion fully stands on GATE. I like the idea of GATE, but the implementation of GATE in the way how humans behave, in the incentive structure that humans move on, I am not sure if the implementation of GATE in the way that it was implemented was the ideal solution. I don't know if I will say that. I don't know. Probably not. Probably not. But you could see how the proliferation of the money that we had during the oil boom days, leaving one stuck with a certificate or diploma, I think it could have been managed better. I agree. The proliferation of the money during the oil boom days helped for a lot of this. Truly a great case study for this is Russia, which allowed for only a small minority of individuals to own their formerly national industries. Many of these extremely wealthy individuals lobby the Kremlin against free market reforms. Of course they do. The oligarch class. Right. The old money that we had from the oil business, I think that spoiled us in a way, because it allowed us to move our economy forward as a cheat move. It's like you. I don't know how many of you in your younger days. I had a lot of younger days playing SimCity and games like that. You know, those games where you build a city building simulation style games. I really liked some of those. Some of those were a lot of fun. SimCity, Civilization, City Builders, etc., etc., etc. Anyway, in those, there's a natural progression of things. As you collect more taxes from more people, you are able to expand your city more because now you have more resources. But that means you must be able to effectively manage all the people you have to collect the maximum amount of resources from them. But imagine if you could have put in a cheat code and land a couple million inside of your treasury without having to collect the tax money from the people. Then you don't need to get into the very good management of people. That doesn't need to bother. You don't need to bother with that. You have enough money. You'd give enough social programs. Yes, people could be stealing from the social programs, but that doesn't matter. You'd put in more money into it next year. We have a lot of money. And that is the problem. I think some of that spoiled us. And I was looking, Guyana has been throwing some jabs at Trinidad, rightfully in some of the cases, saying that they don't want to end up like Trinidad. The way Trinidad ended up in using and squandering our resources, Guyana is looking at us as a case study in how they do not want to end up, and they're trying to do things differently. But I've been following Guyana because they are our neighbors, and many people are saying Guyana is the place to be. That's the new frontier of investment in the Caribbean, and they are the ones that are going to be built up very soon. Now, I wouldn't doubt that Guyana is going to see and is seeing a lot of progress right now, but I wonder how much of it is going to trickle down to the average Guyanese citizen, because there's a lot of it already going out, and then when you watch the spending of it, you wonder if they are just following our same lead. Interesting. Guyana setting bad pattern by spending all its initial oil profits. Analyst says Exxon drilling for oil, Guyana digging fiscal hole. Guyana is bent on the development of much needed infrastructure and has dedicated the first haul of its oil profits to this year's budget to assist with the financing of its many projects, already issuing some precaution on unsustainable oil-reliant spending because of market volatility. The Institute of Energy Economics and Financial Analysis is also pointing the country to keep gauge on its internal affairs as it begins to expend oil profits. Let me read through some of this quickly. The Institute submitted in one of its recent assessments on Guyana's oil sector that the country already seems to be mismanaging its funds and setting a bad precedence on how future spending of oil money will be conducted. The concern is raised because spending of the oil money should improve the country's financial position by, among other things, helping to lower its debt and budget deficit. They are among the advice provided to Guyana by the International Monetary Fund when such technical support was requested. Tom Sanzillo reminded that the 4 key objectives that the money in the National Resource Fund would be used to keep: firstly, close the deficits, increase funding for budget needs, reduce debt, and save for future generations. With the passage of this year's budget, what was observed, Sanzillo related, was that oil revenues were not enough to cover the non-oil budget deficit. The new revenue from oil production of Guyanese, $127 billion, let's get that into US dollars, $606 million US dollars, fell short of the non-oil budget deficit, which is calculated by subtracting the total amount of non-oil revenue from total government expenditures. In other words, they are spending more money than they are making on oil. Good night, Jonte. Good night, KJ. Always nice to have you in the house. Taking the taxi in Guyana back to the airport, the driver tell me he wants to migrate to Trinidad and Tobago. No surprise there. Guyana is already spending more than they are making on oil. The 2022 budget does fund new needs, Sanzillo pointed out, but does so in an unsustainable manner. The new revenues partially supported the government's 37% increase in spending over last year's budget. The higher spending level was made possible, hear this, through a combination of new oil revenues and new borrowing. So while new spending should not have exceeded the amount contributed into the NRF, it did, Sanzillo noted. And this is despite the government agreeing that in any year, the amount of increased spending would not exceed the amount of the oil revenue received. They agreed to that. They were not going to increase the amount of oil revenue, the amount of spending more than the amount of oil revenues they received. But no, it is too tempting. It is just too tempting. We have so much money now and we can do so much. And it's just so easy. We can just point to it and say, let it be done. Let that be done. Build that. Do that. Do that. And bear in mind, as contracts pass like water in all directions, lots of people are made very wealthy by it. And don't doubt that some of them would have some political links. Now, I could probably understand the thinking that some Guyanese politicians may have in this case. We already have oil. We have a lot of oil too. Yes, we may increase the debt this year. But this is just to get us out of this rut that we are in right now. By next year, when we finish these projects, we could decrease it. The reality is, when you see how spending goes on, look at Trinidad and Tobago. The spending goes up. It hardly ever goes down. Hardly ever. And when the government starts to spend more and more and more, we end up with things like we have in Trinidad and Tobago, where we have these massive social programs that 5,000 people outside of Trinidad are collecting social grants for. That 27-year-olds are collecting senior citizen pensions for. Because that's the money just flowing so quickly, so easily, because we just have so much. And it seems like Guyana might be falling into some of that same problem. They already started increasing salaries and social programs, just like Venezuela. Yes, I see that. I saw that. A lot of this spending is on social programs. They're going down that more populist road. And I understand to some extent, because I could understand the history of Guyana. Guyana has had some difficult decades. They have had some difficult time. You're trying to ease your population. I think, though, a lot of this should have been focused in on infrastructure, things that last, things that you can spend on now, and the value of it would remain there for decades to come, not just on things that are so flippant and pass by, but okay. And yeah, they may be looking at the future coming windfall of money, that we would have enough money in the future to always cover this. But here's the problem. Gas and oil may very well be, to some extent, on the way out. If you look around, there's some BACCHANAL right now in the United States where the US president is under some heat. He's under some pressure because they are struggling with the gas prices, while he closed down some drilling, etc., etc. But he was trying to point out recently that there are over 9,000 leases for drilling all around their country, and many of the oil companies just aren't drilling, and that's actually true. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have some of that too. There are some places that are open to be drilled, and some of these companies just aren't drilling right now. Because you see, if you're an oil and gas company right now in this present climate, you're looking and you're measuring what you're doing. You're trying to evaluate your cost benefit analysis here. What is going to happen in the next decade? We know the direction that a lot of the global powers are heading in has a lot to do with climate change and decreasing the carbon footprint, and decreasing the amount of oil and gas we pull out of the soil. So if the world is heading in that direction, maybe increasing the amount of drilling may not be the best idea. But if the world is heading in that direction, don't you think, if you are someone like Guyana, you may be looking to spend any last amount of money you can mop up up in this oil economy on advancing yourself to a point where you could be sustainable outside of the oil economy, not increasing your debt, not increasing your deficit. Or if you are a country like Trinidad and Tobago, you'd be trying to decrease all of the barriers to doing business, make the ease of doing business so great that all the companies in the Caribbean want to headquarter themselves here. You see, if you could get all of the Caribbean companies to headquarter themselves in Trinidad and Tobago, then for a large part, we might even need the oil and gas economy. We could make a business, we can make an economy out of being this financial hub, out of being this commercial hub for the Caribbean. And Trinidad and Tobago is well set to be such. We have, as the We Pay founder said, we have a highly educated population, we have a lot of well-functioning infrastructure, etc., etc., etc. Trinidad is a good place to do it. Maybe that should be more the direction we're heading in. Furthermore, Guyana is plagued with political tribalism similar to TNT, which is unfortunate for both countries, of course. Honestly, as much as I like cars, building infrastructure around cycling and walking have a myriad of benefits. Yeah, that might be important in cities, but in a country like Guyana, cycling and walking, I mean, have you looked at Guyana on a map? There's quite a bit of Guyana. There's quite a bit of Guyana. If you want to cycle across Guyana, you're going to have quite a cycle, bro. Quite a cycle. But it is unfortunate. And though Guyana has spoken with a bit of venom to Trinidad and Tobago, I do not want to see them go down that negative path, because if Guyana succeeds, I am of the opinion, you know, that the rising tide raises all ships, and I am a ship in this Caribbean Sea too. If Guyana rises, I see that I can benefit also. I do not want Guyana to falter. That doesn't benefit me. But when you look at the evidence you're seeing right now, you could kind of wonder. I remember saying a verse from the Holy Book when I was speaking about this Guyana versus Trinidad issue early on. Let not he that puts on his armor speak as he that takes it off. Guyana is now entering the battle. You should be cautious how you look at some veterans in the battle and you watch how they are scarred and disfigured. And so you mean you couldn't have blocked that shot? All right, okay, yes, maybe we should have been able to block that shot. Maybe we should have been able to put on some more armor. Maybe all of that is true, but you're entering that oil and gas battlefield now with all that money pulsing through the hands of your heavily tribalized political landscape. Let's see how that would work for you. And I do hope it works out for the best. It's the name. They're the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. It's socialist. Yeah, Guyana was heavily socialist at a point in time. The amount of money confused them. Alright, that's all I have now for you folks over on YouTube and you folks over on Instagram and you folks over on TikTok. There would be no afterlife chat tonight. It's a holiday. We're taking the holiday off of the afterlife chat. So I hope you are educated, informed, or entertained, and I will see you again tomorrow night for the next Mindful Live around 9:30 p.m. That's the general starting time of the live on TikTok and on Instagram, and on YouTube it follows a little while after that. So thank you for being here, folks. It was a pleasure, and I will see you again tomorrow. Peace.